It's day 2 of Miami Heat training camp, and we give you our takeaways, including a vibe check on what Eric Spoelstra referred to as a very competitive day. Whose stock is rising? Whose name is buzzing? These young players have really stood out so far. We buy or sell the latest takes around the NBA, including the Ringers preseason power rankings, the return of James Harden, and the hype in Boston. All that on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me as always is David Ramil. However you're tuning in, YouTube, Odyssey, your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We'll get to our training camp risers and power rankings of the Eastern Conference here in a second, but I want to start with your experience, David, at training camp. I was there yesterday. I talked about my first day there. We were both at training camp at FAU today. What did you think about the team's energy, the vibe in the building?
I don't know that it was as energetic as I expected to. I thought it was going to be more like what I've seen from practices and our shoot-arounds. And while there was certainly the element of that, you know, a lot of players working off to the side with assistant coaches, putting up shots after the sprints and the running and the kind of conditioning work that the players have gone through over the last couple of days, because that's what we've heard is basically it. Not really much in terms of playbook and scrimmaging and things like that, just more or less doing a lot of conditioning and getting into those kinds of later developments, over the next couple of days. But it was just a very solemn kind of feeling to it. A lot of competitive fire, maybe even some tension there because of that high-level competition. And the more I thought about it, I kind of at first was like, well, maybe this is kind of like a little bit doom and gloom. Maybe there's not the same kind of buzz that we've seen from the team at different points over the last couple of years. And yet the more I think about it, it really is just a matter of like, you have guys that are trying to still compete, older players like Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love, and others who are trying to show that they can still cut it at this level in their respective careers. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where you've got guys like Nikola Jovic or Jaime Jaquez and other training camp invitees that are busting their ass for the opportunity to make it into an NBA roster. All that is a really combustible mix of different energies there. And at the same time, I think Eric Spoelstra loves this. Like, he is just like, you know what? Give me all this fire. Give me all this tension. We can work with this. I asked him about the mood of camp, and that's basically what he said. He's saying right now, he's very fond of saying every training camp has like a specific kind of theme to it, like not this competition, but other. Yes, a personality their own. And I think he just said it's too early yet, but it's competitive, and we can work with this. And he seemed like really gung-ho about the whole thing.
Yeah. So my understanding, day one of training camp was sloppy, right? And that's not new. And that has nothing, and that means nothing for how this regular season is going to exactly. Day two is a lot more competitive in terms of what it is that they were able to accomplish. Some mixed scrimmages, a lot of conditioning, a lot of running up and down the court, a lot of basic stuff. The team has not even started installing its full playbook yet. It's just kind of putting in some basic offensive actions and teaching not even schemes defensively, but more so principles, if that makes sense. So talking with some players and things like that, that's sort of my understanding what's going on. Again, nothing new, totally expected.
A lot of weigh-ins.
A lot of weigh-ins today. We got to install Pat Riley actually get on the scale at one point.
Yeah,
and he weighed himself in.
Jovic told me that he gets weighed before and after practice, and they drop like a ton of weight during the course of today's first practice.
Yeah, you could tell talking to the young guys and some of the new guys on the E10s and stuff like that. Like, they're like, we do a lot of running here, and I was not necessarily prepared for that. It was like, yep, that's sort of the deal. And guess what? You're in South Florida, so you're gonna sweat a lot. So double bonus. The vibe in training camp has been interesting. I'm having a hard time, and maybe this is just because I'm dumb, but separating the fact that everybody's getting back to work. And so there's a little bit of a Monday back to work kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And also just the sleepy FAU campus. And I am sorry if anybody, I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who go to FAU, and it seems like a wonderful university. Go Owls. What a run to the Final Four last year, and all the other nice things I could possibly say. Dusty May is the real deal. Okay. Like, whatever else I need to say, please don't hate me. Maybe it's just because it's early in the school semester. I don't know, but it's just like it's a little bit of a sleepy vibe around the arena right now. It's probably because sports season hasn't really started. That's honestly probably what it is right now. But around the arena where we are located, it's just a little sleepy. And I don't know if that's also influencing my perception of what's going on there, or if it's just like, hey, we also just got done running a bunch of sprints for 2 hours, and now we don't really want to talk to anybody. And maybe that's also the vibe that we're getting. But the vibe is generally sort of just like, can we please leave this arena right now? And and that's just sort of what I'm getting here. And I'm not saying I'm worried about it, David. I'm just like, that's just an observation. That's all I'm saying.
I can imagine, like, just picture this in sharp contrast to last year and the fact that they were in the Bahamas. And I know you're not exactly going out for drinks for a long time. Yeah, you could, like, you know what? I'm getting out of this practice. I'm in the Bahamas. It's very, very different than saying I'm in Boca Raton. No knock again against South Florida, anybody in Boca Raton, but it's just not, you know that you're not going to have a lot to do there. And I think it's kind of the Sioux Falls Skyforce mentality, right? Like, you bring them there. What was the name that Orlando Robinson told us? The Blue Mountain Restaurant. It's the only one in town, a couple breweries, etc. But I think that's what it is. Like, FAU, not really popping there, not much of a vibe. The bar scene around FAU, probably not too lively. I'm sure we'll
and if we're wrong, please tell us. If we're missing the college bars,
I'd love to go.
No, yeah. we will go. Yeah. We will go. If we're wrong,
we will review them.
Let us know. Give us the recommendations. Give us the college bar. Go Owls. I would love to know. But I'm with you. It's such a great observation, and I hate that Boca Raton has basically become Sioux Falls, South Florida. Falls. But but that's the reason why, like. It's sort of the reason why they went to the Bahamas. You and I, we didn't go to the Bahamas last year, but we heard stories like, hey, we're in the Bahamas, but we're also sort of locked into a gym and a hotel room. And the beach is just, it's almost like, this is not a great comparison, but it's almost like prison where it's like being on Alcatraz. It's like the water is right there, but I can't get there. That's sort of what it was like for the players last year. And it was similar to when they went to Pensacola during the Big 3 era, I think it was, right? And then you and I think we're talking about this, and it's like, it's kind of similar. It's like, if there is a Sioux Falls, Florida, it's probably Pensacola. But again, you know what? Whatever. I'm done apologizing. Miami's the best city in Florida, right? Okay? It just is, all right? So
they're not doing it in the Keys. They're not doing it in like Orlando. They're doing it. I mean, it's not like Orlando's like. I mean, Orlando
would probably be it's probably too soon for Orlando. It's probably still traumatizing. Like, hey, guess what? We're gonna go in a bubble in Orlando. They'd be like, absolutely not. We're not doing that again. But in terms of like the vibe again, I also wonder if it's a little bit like business as usual stuff from the guys like Jimmy and Bam and Kyle. No Udonis Haslam for the first training camp in literally 2 decades for the Heat. I think that matters. But I think it's a little bit business as usual for the vets. But like all this stuff that we're talking about is sort of like sleepy, all this stuff. Not the case when it comes to the young guys at all. Like those dudes are going for it. We're about to talk about Nikola Jovic here in a minute. He's bouncing around that practice court, right? Like and you already pointed this out, very kind of different like segments of this 21 right now 21 person Heat roster. And it does make for sort of just like this weird confluence of energy and vibes and things like that. But I also think maybe part of this is, hey, I'm really excited for real basketball to get started, but the Miami Heat are very much a business oriented sort of operation, and maybe I'm just like, hey, why aren't you guys as excited about basketball as I am, where they just process it and handle it differently? Like, I don't know what I'm projecting and what's reality, in other words.
It is hard to kind of separate. I mean, it's not like we're there. I mean, we should. I will go out and say this here for any Heat people who are listening to this. We should absolutely be sitting in on practices. It seems a little ridiculous considering other major sports allow media members to sit there and watch practices. We're not giving away state secrets or anything like that. I understand that visiting media sometimes does sit in there, but if it's not, and this is training camp again, we're not going to let anything out of there that is going to be.
You're not doing anything. You're literally not. You're just scrimmaging.
I would say that even
if defense in the NBA, cool, like great.
Even if practices were open, I would go so far as to say that Miami probably would not care. Like they would just be like, no, we're not really opening up practices no matter what, because they just want to keep it all in house. Whatever fights are breaking out, they love it.
Spo keeps his starting lineup secret until like 60 seconds before tip-off. I'm like, what's the coach going to do 10 minutes before tip-off versus 2 minutes before tip-off?
I almost wish we could see like some kind of like special courier, like in a black mask or something like that, just kind of like taking it directly from Spo's hand. Go fly like the wind, take the lineup in, don't let anybody stop you on the way.
Yeah, the one guy like Woj and Shams haven't gotten their hands on yet. It's just like this mystery person with all the Miami Heat state secrets. We got to figure out who that is. All right, we already mentioned Nikola Jovic. The guy that everybody was talking about, not just at today's practice, but yesterday's practice. We'll tell you why after this here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Look, the weather's getting cooler. That means it's time to stock your closet with winter clothes. You got to get, we're in South Florida. Got to get that nice, I don't know, windbreaker. I'm not that sure exactly. Maybe a scarf. Look, you know what? It's
scarf. 87 degrees.
I know it's not. I know it's not exactly a really cold place here in South Florida, but you know what? Here we love our fashion. We like looking good, and you can get that kind of accessory. People just love breaking it out as soon as it drops below 60. I know if everybody out there is just kind of like my wife, the second it gets below 60, that's it. You're breaking out whatever winter gear you have because you never have the opportunity to wear.
Nice pair of corduroy pants, maybe a rug.
I forgot I had these.
Polo.
Yeah. So the good point is that you can get these kinds of things delivered through Ibotta. You can save money in the process because you can even get cash back on hundreds of online brands, retailers too. When you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more, the average Ibotta user earns about $100 per year. It could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, or you could use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. But right now, download the Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED to start earning real cash back. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app. Use the code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA at the Google Play or App Store and use the code LOCKED. That's LOCKED.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app. Training Camp Stock Watch, looking at the biggest riser through 2 days of training camp, David, and it's got to be Nikola Jovic. Now, part of this is that a lot of media have asked about Nikola Jovic, and that's part of the reason why so many players are talking about Nikola Jovic, is because they're asked about him point blank. That said, their comments have been very, very high on Nikola Jovic, and I'll go to Jimmy Butler in particular, who said, and I think this is so important, he's walking around with his chest up, and I love it. That's a full quote from Jimmy Butler. That means a lot coming from somebody like Jimmy, who says everything with his chest, right? And Nikola Jovic, it's such a great observation because he very much was not that in his rookie year, right? Like you and I were around him. He's always a nice guy. But he was a rookie. He was really young. He wasn't even graduated from high school, right? Didn't have the diploma, right? And I mentioned this to you off to the side at training camp today. He went from a guy who was just sort of have like that freshman in high school energy. Like, look, I'm not even really sure where my locker is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know where my second period English class is. To now, like high school senior energy, right? Like, I own this place. These are my dudes. All these new guys got to get in line behind me, and I'm here for a good time. And this is my school now. This is my campus. Like he's got big man on campus energy. I love it, and I love speaking with Nikola Jovic. I love even more than just talking to him, just watching him interact with his teammates. Right? Like it's night and day. It is absolutely night and day. Would you agree?
Oh my gosh, he's so much more relaxed and confident. He feels like he belongs. Like he told us at Media Day how difficult it was for him to make that transition, something that I think a lot of people have overlooked. Very young, European, adapting to a new country, a new league, a new way of doing things. And it's so impossible to try and get into the flow of things. Like I think the only exception that I can think of, honestly, is Luka Doncic, and it's mostly because that kid has been playing professionally since he was a sperm cell. Like there's been, Luka is one of one, and the expectation was not for Nikola Jovic to become Luka Doncic. Even Nikola Jokic, as good as he is, he wasn't this when he first got there. He was deferential. He was kind of figuring it out. It took him years to get to this point.
Behind
now
Yusuf
he is
Nurkic, like Paul Millsap.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. I think their GM too. I think Calvin Booth kind of like played over him too, and he's not the GM of the team. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But as far as Jovic is concerned, like he told me today, he's like, you know what? Now I feel like I belong. I'm so much more comfortable. Everything's fine. Everything's great. He was laughing it up. He was talking much more comfortable. And he again reiterated how difficult last year was. None of that now. It's all in the past.
There was a point where, okay, so just I don't know how much inside baseball this is. I actually find this interesting. I don't know if our listeners will find this interesting,
Sure.
but so media gathers on one side where for the media session. So Eric Spoelstra there's like a Miami Heat banner. You've seen it if you've seen the interviews on social media and whatever. On our YouTube page, we actually posted the Jimmy, Eric Spoelstra, and Caleb Martin post-practice interviews today. If you're interested in listening to those in full, but there's like a Miami Heat banner behind Spo and behind Caleb. They set it, the PR department sets it up there, whatever, on one side. Jimmy Butler's not going to be bothered to walk from one side of the court to the other. He's going to make the media walk to him. That's the Jimmy Butler way, and that's what we do. So anyway, he's on the opposite side of the gym, and so we are tasked with walking over there and meeting him in his spot. As the media schmucks that we are walking towards Jimmy Butler, we go into the direct path where Nikola Jovic is shooting some practice shots after training camp today. And he's just like, he's shooting at a hoop, and all the schmucks just walk right under the hoop, right? So now he can't shoot for 7 or 8 seconds, however long it takes for us to all to get past there. And there's, I forget who it was, but one of the PR guys was like, guys, what are you doing? Like, go over there. Like, don't go right in this path. And Nikola Jovic yells to the PR guys, like, he's like, get off the court, jerks. Like, and we're like, oh, no, sorry, we're jerks. Like, this is what we do. And then Nikola Jovic was just like, no, it's okay. These are my people. And I'm just like, dude, like, this is great. Like, we're not your people, but like, I appreciate, like, he's about the team here, man. Like, we're all here in Sioux Falls, South Florida together, just trying to survive, you know? Like, it was, and so I love that by Jovic. It's just so outspoken. It goes out of his way. He's not shy whatsoever. He's got a great personality, and I love to see it. Like, again, I said it already, just bouncing around the gym, hanging out with teammates, media, Heat staffers. And I know it sounds like we're just sort of waxing poetic about Nikola Jovic's personality, but this stuff matters. Like, the more you get into the NBA, I say this all the time, but the more you cover the NBA, the closer you get to these teams, the more you realize, like, the personalities and the chemistry and all of this stuff.
These things matter.
It's so intangible, but it literally does matter in terms of wins and losses. I truly do believe that. And when you have a guy feeling himself, that results in better play on the court. And that's why we have him as a big riser. And going back to our sort of the premise of this segment, David, when you hear people talk about him, not that they don't only mention hey, he's more confident. And Jimmy Butler, he's walking with his chest up, but the shots coming along, he's more confident out there. He's making better decisions. He's getting to the hoop more. Like, this confidence translates to real basketball stuff on the court.
Yeah, he told us he wanted to be getting shots up more quickly, and just being more impactful. And I saw him today as he was kind of putting up some practice shots on the other end of the court before he came over and media interrupted his shooting. He was going through drills there with Duncan, Orlando Robinson, and a couple others, just putting up shots really, really quickly, lightning right off his hands. So I think there's a comfort level there. He's worked with the shot doctors. He's worked with a lot of these guys, for a year now. And of course, the experiences over the summer, I think, have really helped. Now, I'm curious because we've seen Eric Spoelstra over the course of his career, and he is very hesitant. As much as we all, and as much as I think Heat fandom wants to get on board with the idea of the young guys like Javier Jaquez, we love his style. We think he's going to be impactful. We've heard good things about him too. Nikola Jovic, he's already seeming more confident. He's the name that's got everybody buzzing. How likely is it that Eric Spoelstra starts kind of moving towards the idea of playing these guys more often? Because we've heard the good buzz. We've heard the good buzz about KZ Okpala, a young guy who maybe had some potential and never quite worked out. Are you buying that Nikola Jovic is going to be part of the rotation based on everything that we've heard from him and everything else that we've seen around camp so far?
Going into training camp, I thought those minutes we're going to go either to Nikola Jovic or Haywood Highsmith. I think those guys are competing for very similar minutes, probably behind Kevin Love, penciling in Kevin Love as the starting power forward on opening night. I think now after a couple of days, Jovic probably has the edge, and they'll find room for Haywood Highsmith. Because the difference between Jovic and Highsmith is Highsmith can legitimately play he can play both forward spots. I don't know. Jovic says he could play all the positions. I think they very much view him as a 4, a versatile 4, but a 4 nonetheless, right? And so I think they can find other room for Highsmith. And you mentioned Jaquez. If we're going to do the full like young guys stock report, the guys whose stock are rising is Jovic and Jaquez. Like people are really, really impressed with Jaime Jaquez. Like this, like to a player said, this dude can play right now. And again, you're asking about them. You're asking about these players point blank, but you're not asking them, hey, can this guy play right away? And then Jimmy Butler's like, yes, this guy can play right away. It's like the questions very much were worded.
He's like a vet out there.
Yeah, looked like a vet out there.
No, he's like a vet. He's making veteran plays. He knows what to do. Does all the little things, etc. Like you could give. And Jimmy is certainly savvy enough to kind of skirt around the answer if he doesn't feel comfortable talking him up or anything like that. He could be like, oh, he's shown a lot of energy out there. What the hell does that mean, right? Everybody's showing a lot of energy. But he's gone to the specifics, like the kind of specifics that I think the more optimistic Heat fan sees in Jaquez is the fact that he is a more plug-and-play type player because he has that kind of experience at UCLA. He knows what to do. And all the talk about him as a drafting player and during summer league is he does the little things. He dives on the floor, makes the right play, brings about contact, etc. Like he's a guy that will get under your skin. I think the kind of player that Heat fans have grown to love over their fandom, a guy who does all the little dirty work, all the things that don't necessarily show up on the box score. That's the description we're hearing of him.
And just again, to be like, yes to all the things you just said, but also like when we hear, well, he looks like a veteran out there. It's also like the playbook isn't confusing him. Like whatever we're giving him, he's downloading and then processing and then employing it in whatever way that is that they're doing it in these close practices. And then, like I said, like he knows where his locker is. In other words, like he knows where it is. Like he's good to go. Like
to tie it all together,
more and he can do it.
We didn't hear this about Jovic last year, and maybe the questions weren't necessarily as pointed. But I think a lot of the talk at that point in time in training camp was, who's going to start the 4? Can Omer Yurtseven play alongside Bam Adebayo?
Jovic was drafted as an 18-year-old and with a high ceiling. And every time Jovic, tantalizing skill set, really high ceiling, super excited about what he can be. With Jaquez, it's more like this guy's good right now. And who nobody's really talking about what he can be, but he wasn't drafted. Like they're very different prospects coming into this. And by the way, Jaquez is literally older than Jovic, despite like he's just older already. Like so, it's very different for him versus what it was for Jovic. So that's the stock report. Quickly, we don't have to get into it, but if you have another name, now's the time to throw it out there. But those were my 2 guys, was Jovic and Jaquez in terms of stock reports rising.
I didn't hear about anything else really kind of popping. I think.
Those are the 2 guys.
Did I hear Orlando Robinson? I want to say
Tentative
so I would
Orlando.
expect him to get some minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because you've got the more ready-made kind of player and Bryant, and I think a guy that they're familiar with versus what despite the year that he spent in Miami. I think there's still questions about what Orlando Robinson can be at this level during the regular season consistently.
Where do the Miami Heat rank in the Eastern Conference? And another chance to disagree with Paul Pierce. That's coming up next. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. If for whatever reason you missed any of our Media Day content, it's all there up on YouTube. Individual interviews, also bonus episodes of all the interviews that we did on your podcast app, stringing together a bunch of different interviews with Duncan Robinson, Haywood Highsmith, Nikola Jovic, Orlando Robinson. Had a great 20-minute conversation with Orlando. We didn't get a chance to talk about him at length in the last segment, but you could go find all that stuff right from his mouth in your podcast feed and on YouTube. Also have full interviews from post-training camp day 2 of Eric Spoelstra, Caleb Martin, and Jimmy Butler, so you can hear exactly what it is that he had to say after practice, his first availability since media day. All of that, again, is up on YouTube. This segment, however, is buy or sell. David, you had some hot button NBA topics that you wanted to get to.
Yeah, a long time segment for long time listeners. If you're familiar with the show and have been subscribing for a long time, you know the buy and sell. We're just kind of gauging what's going on out there, whether it's part of Heat Nation. In this case, there's a couple things that do impact the Heat somewhat directly, but also just kind of around the league. Are we buying it? Are we selling it? Are we kind of mid on it? So if we start off with the ringer already, I can imagine some people rolling their eyes at ringers. No, it's not necessarily gushing about the Boston Celtics, but it's a somewhat unexpected review of the Miami Heat, the preseason power rankings. They've got the Miami Heat listed at ninth. These preseason rankings, by the way, come specifically from Kevin O'Connor, a guy who's been known to be a little bit pro Boston in his tenure there. But he says this of the Miami Heat, he's got them listed at ninth in the preseason power rankings. And this was what he said in his little paragraph about the Miami Heat. It was a failure of an offseason for the Heat. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus walked for nothing. Pat Riley didn't make a push for Bradley Beal. He didn't go all in for Dame Lillard. Now they're left with Josh Richardson and unproven prospects Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez to make up for the losses. So I think I'm curious, are you buying or selling Kevin O'Connor's ninth ranking of the Miami Heat? Do you think that's fair, unfair? What would you say that is?
I'm going to go ahead and buy this. And for added context,
I'm buying or selling?
Well, he's got him third in the East, and he's got a bunch of Western Conference teams basically between Miami and Milwaukee, Boston, who's gotten his top two. I don't remember in what order. And then he's got Denver at number one, and I think Denver deserves to be number one because they're the champions. And just until somebody proves otherwise, they're number one. So I care more about where it is that the Heat rank in the East versus where they rank in the NBA in general. I don't really care how the Heat stack up against the Lakers, for instance. And I don't even know where he has the Lakers, if he has them above. Is the Clippers 8, is the Grizzlies, then the Warriors, and then the Lakers at 5. And then he's got Phoenix, Milwaukee, Boston, and then Denver. I care more about how the Heat stack up against Milwaukee and Denver. And then really, actually, where the Heat stack up against the other teams in the East. Philly, Cleveland, the Knicks, like there's other teams that made the playoffs last year who are just more in where Miami's range is right now. Like if you're making the Eastern Conference power rankings, you have to have Milwaukee and Boston at the top two in some order. And then those other teams in kind of whatever order you want. It's very kind of pick your own flavor type of thing, right? It's like a frozen yogurt shop. You want taro? Do you want lime? Like, what do you want? Like, you just get like whatever your taste is in basketball teams, you're just going to go ahead and grab that one. He has Miami at number 3. I honestly found that surprising, but I'm not going to disagree with him. I like Miami at number 3 in the East, but I think it's a pretty clear gap between Miami and all those other teams that were mentioned, and then obviously Milwaukee and Boston. I don't even think I don't think that's an especially like debatable even, statement.
I think it was kind of shows a little bit of respect and maybe even a little fear for what Miami has accomplished over the last couple of years. And I think it's a proven point. Like, you cannot write off this team because they may find a way to win. They're going to take advantage of opportunities. They're going to find a way to make you make mistakes. And given all that, like, there was a really interesting quote today from Tobias Harris about what happened with the 76ers versus the Boston Celtics last year, where they had a lot of baggage and they didn't have guys that were willing to step up in the moment. Miami has that in abundance. They have had those guys for a number of years. They still have those guys. They find a way to make the big play when it matters most. And that has
two finals in the last 4 years, 3 conference finals in the last 4 years. And then you compare Miami with the rest of that group. And I know that we've talked about a lot of sort of the question marks and the uncertainty with Miami, but the one thing we know about the Heat is they're going to come out and they're going to work their butts off. They're going to compete and they're going to be really well coached. And they still have Jimmy Butler, who is one of the most efficient and clutch players in the NBA. And you still have Bam Adebayo, who's the best defender in the NBA. And they got a bunch of other kind of toolsy kind of guys around that core, that core too, where you compare that to like the Knicks, great story last year. Congrats to the Knicks. I actually really respected that team last season, right? It's also the Knicks, you know what I mean? And it's Tom Thibodeau, and you don't really know, like, we've seen this from the Knicks. It's like, oh yeah, cool, fun story. And then they sort of backslide the next year. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of their pattern. Philly is, we know the Philly thing. We're about to get to that, I think. Other teams like Cleveland, like Cleveland had a great regular season, not like a lot of question marks after their playoff run. Like of that group, Miami is the most sure thing. And then you compare them again to Milwaukee and Boston. And Spo said this the other day, like basketball games aren't won on paper. Well, all we have right now is paper because we haven't played any basketball games. So on paper, those teams are better than the Miami Heat, but we'll see how the season plays out.
Well, speaking of playing out, James Harden vowed to make training camp as uncomfortable as possible for those 76ers as they go to camp in Colorado State University's campus. I'm sure it's just as buzzing as FAU's campus is, but he showed up. He showed up today. Maybe no word if things were comfortable or not. Do you buy that James is satisfied and everything's all hunky-dory now over in Colorado?
I'm selling this, man. I do find it interesting that he showed up to training camp and he's sort of like there's video of him like humbly watching Joel Embiid go through his workout. He's kind of getting shots up and laughing with teammates. But here's the thing. And Nick Nurse, and by the way, Nick Nurse was asked about this after and Tobias Harris and a lot of his teammates were asked about this after camp, and all of them said, well, he's here, and so we're happy that he's here, and he's here. Yep. So that's basically essentially what that amounted to. Nick Nurse was asked, like, do you expect him to be here? And he was like, he's got the schedule. I was like, so do I. It doesn't mean I play for the 76ers. Like, it's not hard to find the schedule. But it's look, James Harden's issue was never with Nick Nurse. It was never with Tobias Harris. It was never with Joel Embiid. It was never with any of his teammates. It's with Daryl Morey, whom I'm assuming is in Colorado, but I don't know. I mean, people closer to Philadelphia know that. But he's
got to be there.
It's not. He's probably there. But his issue isn't with the teammates. You know what I mean? So I don't know when this stink is going to come about. I almost think it's actually hilarious by James Harden to just show up and just be like just a normal guy at work and just sort of push the papers and go home. Like, I find that hilarious for a lot of different reasons, but we'll see how it plays out the rest of the week.
I can you imagine him trying to pull the same thing that Jimmy Butler did while he was with Minnesota a couple seasons ago. I mean, I don't think he could lead a practice squad of Sixers players against Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and everybody else, but it would be kind of hilarious.
He could do the opposite. He could do the opposite and just like submarine the starting unit.
Oh, that would be pretty good. That would be pretty good. Also, are you buying or selling Coach Deion Sanders delivering a pep talk to those same Sixers yesterday? There was a video of Deion Sanders that notable. Is that going to cement and get this team glued together? Are they going to finally fight as one?
I'm buying it as in terms
You're
of
buying.
Like no, I'm buying it just like NBA coaches bringing in guest speakers and it's fun and you're in Colorado and he's right there and he's popular and whatever. Like, he's got a way with words, no doubt about it. He's motivated his Colorado team to win 3 times as many games as they've won last year. You know what I mean? So, like, obviously there's something to this guy. But I'm selling it in terms of that being the difference between them being like a championship team and them being what they've been in the past. But in general, I'm buying Nick Nurse's approach to coaching this roster with or without James Harden, and that's part of it.
Speaking of hype in the Eastern Conference, there's a team over at Beantown that's got everybody really hyped up. And this quote that was sent out from John Corrales, of course, the host of Locked on Celtics, I think he's quoting another reporter, Stephen Pagluka. I don't know who that is, but apparently he said to Corrales, quote, Paul said he's never seen an NBA practice in his whole entire career that they went that hard, that fast, for that long, end quote. So first of all, some unusual wording there on that quote, but if you don't get you distracted by that, Paul Pierce saying that this new revamped Celtics roster is the real deal. Are you buying or selling the hype train out of Boston?
You know where I am at this. Look, congrats to Boston. The Drew Holiday trade was a win. I like KP for them.
We get the air
horn.
Let's get the air horn. Air horn for the Boston Celtics media mafia. Come on.
I'm selling this, man. Get out of here. The hardest, fastest practice, dude. It's been what? Like 2 hours since training camp started. Relax. Maybe it's because he's so stoned that everything looks super fast to him nowadays. I don't know what it is with Paul Pierce, but like just like this media hype train. Like, I already said this before, but just like if there's defensive player of the year odds for Drew Holiday right now, just buy them all up because you know he's going to steal it from Bam Adebayo again. If Marcus Smart did it once, just imagine how the Boston media hype train is going to just gush over Drew Holiday. It's over. It's over. He's already won Defensive Player of the Year. Give him the reward or the award. It's done because the Boston Media Hype Trader is like, this team runs the hardest training camp practices anybody's ever seen, including Paul Pierce, who pooped his pants during a game and thinks he's better than Dwayne Wade. It's just like, get out of here, man. Like, everything the Celtics do is as good as gold, according to that whole everybody around that team. They cannot be criticized unless they can't dribble to their left, apparently, is the only thing that they could be criticized for. Other than that, they're a perfect organization. Brad Stevens is the God coach, even though he couldn't handle doing it for more than 3 years. Like, it's get out of here with this. I'm sick of everything they're doing is great. You know I'm not like this, David. You know I'm not like this, but it's the media hype around it, and yet the Heat media is the one that gets attacked all summer, and it's the Celtics media that sells. They're like, Marcus Smart is the greatest thing to ever happen to basketball, and as soon as he gets traded, we didn't even need that guy. Kristaps Porzingis is the truth.
Right. Overrated.
That's where it's at. It's just like, get out of here, dude. Enough. Like somebody hold this media conglomerate accountable, because I'm over it, man. I'm over it.
How can you lose one Defensive Player of the Year and then get back one more and Drew Holiday, and we got Kristaps, baby.
They saw this coming the entire time. They knew they were getting Drew. That's why they traded Smart. Brad Stevens is a genius. All this stuff. Like, no, Brad Stevens had no idea this was going to happen. Nobody did. Get out of here. Again, congrats on the trade. It's probably going to work out. I think your team is better than it was last year. But just wait until you get into the Eastern Conference Finals and your best players have a mental breakdown again, because that's what's about to happen.
Yeah. I brought up the Tobias Harris quote again because I just, we've seen this before. Boston, Philadelphia, Atlanta. These teams like to crap the bed, and that's just the reality. And guess what? It's all happened at the hands of Miami.
I'll wait and see if Jaylen Brown can go to his left. How about that? Right?
They don't need it. They got Drew Holiday. DPOY, baby. I'm calling it right here. Calling my shot.
Holiday. Lockdown on-ball defender. Really good at going left. Exactly what we needed. Let's get out of here.
Listen, anyway, one more buy or sell here. We were introduced today in his first time appearing in this capacity. Udonis Haslam appearing with CBS. Are you buying or selling Udonis Haslam in his new role as a media member? After years and years of kind of avoiding media whenever possible, now he's become one of us. He's one of us.
That's unfair. He was always very willing to give the interviews, and in sort of his presidential phase, his last 3 years. I'm buying everything about it except for the suit. I'm selling the suit. You know what
it is?
He needs to take a page out of Kevin Garnett's book and just wear what you wear. Like, Udonis Haslam is t-shirts and basketball shorts and his pit bulls. Like, that's what he does. Just do that. Like, you don't need a suit. You don't need a tie. Nobody wears ties in the year of our Lord 2023. Like, get out of here. Like, you're not Kirk Herbstreit. You don't need the tie. You're Udonis freaking Haslam. You are the baddest dude alive, right? It's like you and KG just need to do KG already had the playbook for you, man. Like, get your podcast, speak real truths with real basketball players, do real stuff. Ooh. You don't need to be on a set, the dog and pony suit and tie. You don't need any of that, man. You're UD. You're a legend. Do your own thing. Show up. Like, just show up in the t-shirts that you wear at home. And I just want to hear what you have to say, because Udonis Haslam is as interesting as they come when you get him in a real moment to talk about basketball. That dude has forgotten more about basketball than you and I will ever know, right, David? So it's like, yes. I want to hear him talk about the game, and I want to hear his perspective on these things. But it's so weird seeing him in a suit and tie. I want real Udonis Haslam. Give me that stuff, man.
Two things on that. One time I wrote a story for Forbes about the Udonis Haslam Foundation, and then I asked them if they had any kind of like promo shots that they want to send me over, and they sent me like these really glossy 8x10 photos, and it was Udonis like in a blue collared pullover shirt, and I was like, I don't even know what the hell I'm looking at here. Like, this is, it just completely threw me off. It was like Udonis Haslam on the way to the golf course kind of thing, and I was just like, I am not prepared for this version of Udonis.
Somebody sent me the CBS shot, and I'm like, is this AI? Like AI is like deep faking stuff. I'm like, this is a deep fake. Like, there's no way this is real. Apparently it's real.
And then second thing, what would the Udonis Haslam podcast be called? Because I think that has real potential there. Like the OG pod or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think,
the OG with UD or something. I don't know, but he should be on the Locked On Podcast Network. How about that?
Without a doubt. And if he needs a co-host, sorry, buddy. I mean, I think it's a good
We'll be his
opportunity.
co-host.
You know, I think it'd be.
I'll do it.
Dual co-hosts. I love it. A 3-man team. We got this. We got this.
Yeah.
So anybody, if you're listening to this, just reach out. Let us know.
Open invite. We won't make you wear a tie. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.